What the world? Oh, man!
SHW, this is our wrestling.
Unbelievable!
You think you could walk all over me, but I don't see that happening. We're warriors.
This crowd is going ballistic!
We told you anybody could show up here tonight.
The Lynch Mob are your first ever SHW Tag Team Champions!
You're kidding me.
And listen to this crowd, they're loving it. Joe Black is your Rumblejack 2020 winner.
Unbelievable.
This is insane.
You get a moonsault, and you get a moonsault, and you get a moonsault.
And now, the voices of Southern Honor Wrestling, Brandon Benefield and Gerard Bonner.
Hey again, everybody. This is the SHW podcast. SHW, this is our wrestling. We are the voices of SHW. It's me, B-Double Brandon Benefield, alongside my broadcast partner, GB, Gerard Bonner, and we are coming off the heels of our two-year anniversary, Still Here 2. And GB, man, I'm just now recovering. I'm just now getting my voice back.
Yeah.
What a night. What a night it was.
What a night. I mean, it was incredible. The lead up to it was amazing. And I mean, there was just a certain type of excitement that was in the air. And boy, as always, SHW does not disappoint. And this was an incredible night. And it usually takes, people don't know this, but it usually takes us a while to kind of recover from it because there's just a lot of energy leading up to it. And of course, we leave it all out there. And man, oh man, but what a night. What a great night. If you guys missed it, you missed a good one. Good Lord.
Just, yeah, if it's not already there, it should be on IWTV very soon. So you're definitely going to want to check that out. Of course, you can sign up for IWTV. It's independentwrestling.tv, and you can get your first 5 days for free if you use the code SHW. And you mentioned how, it kind of takes us a little bit to recover. You know, we have fans ask us quite often that, how come you guys don't do a show every week or every other week, 2 shows?
I would love to personally. I think it'd be great.
And I agree, like, how much fun would that be? But, man, it takes me about a week to wind down from one show. If we were to do it weekly, man, I don't know, man. I'd be withering away, and I'm not even wrestling in the ring.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, it would be amazing, and should the day ever come where we get to that, I am, like, all the way here for it.
Oh,
and,
I'll make myself ready. Don't worry.
Listen, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Right,
we'll absolutely figure it out. Oh,
well, let's talk about the rundown of the matches real quick. And before we do that, we do want to mention we have a very special guest with us on this week's podcast, a gentleman who was making his first time appearance at SHW Still Here, and he had himself a match on the card, and we will talk about him in just a second. And I'm going to leave that as a little teaser. Actually, you probably saw the title of the episode.
Hang out there.
I'm sure you saw the title of the episode, so you know who it is. But still,
I'm
not going to tell you just yet. So let's run down this card real quick. The first match of the evening was Jordan Kingsley from the Honor Society, taking on Chip Day with a special guest referee.
Well, it's funny. I mean, if you guys remember a few weeks back here on the podcast when we had Logan Chase here, he announced to us all that he had just gotten this match for Jordan Kingsley against Chip Day, and yet nobody knew who this special guest referee was. We didn't know. Gary apparently didn't know. And, of course, when Dylan laid it on him, he went crazy, and it was – I'm going to start calling him MacGyver at this point. Hold my beer, Hanson.
Because he's a jack of all trades?
He's a jack of all trades as opposed to a Mac of all trades. Right. Shout out AC Mac. But it's just like this guy can do almost anything. I mean, he can obviously hold his beer fairly well. He can campaign fairly well. He hacks into podcasts fairly well. And now apparently he referees just about fairly well.
Actually, it was shocking.
A great job. We were shocked.
I was shocked at how well he did until the very, very end of the match. Now, earlier in the match, there was a couple times where Jordan Kingsley would go to pin Chip Day, and Jordan's feet would be on the ropes for added leverage.
Yeah.
And he got caught by
Yeah.
Hansen, and Hansen,
Yeah.
didn't count the 3 count. But the way the match ended was controversial because Chip Day had Jordan pinned,
Mhm.
and right before the 3 count, Logan Chase took Jordan's foot, put it on the ropes.
Yeah.
Hansen did not see it,
Nope.
and Chip Day got the 3 count. So
Yeah.
after that, Chip Day leaves the ring. He won the match. It goes down in the books as a W for him.
Yeah.
And Kingsley and Logan Chase were none too pleased, and they beat down Hansen right there in the ring. So what does that mean going forward? Is that the last we've seen of that little interaction? We do not know.
Probably not, because of how well Hansen is being received by the crowd. I mean,
What a pop he got, man.
I mean, it's shocking to me, again, watching his nefarious ways of hacking into our podcast, but the people love him. And as it's often said, you got to give the people what they want. So yeah, just
There you go.
some good stuff. Let me ask you this, because I know we
Yeah.
certainly could go, match by match. I don't want to leave all of the stuff out, let people check it out. But what for you, I mean, this was such a big night. What for you were kind of some of your standout moments, man?
Ooh. Right off the top of my head, there are 2 that stand out.
Yeah.
One of them being the fact that you and I, and Diana as well, got to do the ring introductions for these guys.
Mhm.
We got to call a match for the legendary team
Yeah.
of Ricky and Robert, the Rock and Roll Express, as they took on Matt and Joey Lynch for the SHW tag titles, which was insane.
Yeah.
I still can't believe we did that.
I can't either. 2020, we know, has brought for many a mixed bag of very unusual events. We've seen and said a lot of things we never thought we would see or say. And certainly this ranks up there, but it's one of the good surprises that 2020 has brought us. And when you watch the show on IWTV, you'll understand how in the moment we were. It was just one of those things where you never thought this would happen. It's happening, and you can't let it pass you by. You got to call the match. And I can imagine how difficult it was for Joey and Matt Lynch. You got to wrestle the match, right? Like it's just one of those things, just the level of stardom and the history that the WWE Hall of Famers, the Rock and Roll Express, the 9-time NWA Tag Champions have. It's amazing. And so I'm with you. That was an epic moment for me as well. And for me, of course, watching Joe Black win the SHW championship, the match itself was incredible. We've talked about the fact that he was only going to get one shot. And
he only needed one shot.
And he only needed one shot. To me, I just think about how the roof went off of the action building as we finally all saw Corey Hollis, of all things, tap out.
Wow. Like, I couldn't believe it.
And we think about all the matches that we've seen with Joe Black. Many of them have ended via pinfall, but to see this end via submission made it very definitive. And he did it. He being Joe Black did it somewhat with a leg injury of sorts. I mean, it was really crazy, but to see how the people, I mean, it was incredible, the response he got, and rightfully so. I mean, social media has been going crazy as well. I am so excited for all the crazy things 2020 has brought us, that it has brought us Joe Black as the new flag bearer of Southern Honor Wrestling. I love saying that. I can't wait to see how this title reign goes for him. But I'll tell you what, if social media is any indicator, that poster for the next show, SHW 21, hang it up, print it out, frame it. It's amazing. Good Lord.
That's right. Yeah, print it out, bring it to the show, get Joe Black to maybe sign it.
Yeah.
Then frame it, hang it up, hang it over the fireplace, wherever you want to put it.
You'll need that. You'll need that. Absolutely. Yeah. So those were, I mean, and there were a lot of other incredible moments really in this show. We saw some debuts. We saw a lot of things.
Just real quick, like Ben Buchanan making his singles debut and put on a great performance. I mean, that
guy's a star.
Blue chipper all the way. I mean, he's gonna make waves in pro wrestling.
He is
in the future, because he took on Judas, which was a huge task, of course.
Yeah.
And
it was one of the rare times we saw Judas in a solos match here in SHW. So there's a lot of stories.
You got David Ali and Owen Knight, the new era colliding, clashing, if you will. I guess the new era is done. I guess it's fair to say.
You could really make an argument that that was one of the show-stealing matches of the night. It really, really was. And, of course, the ending of it, nobody saw coming.
Yeah.
Nobody
Big
saw
man, Austin Towers. I mean, we
Austin
saw him at the
Towers.
Rumblejack.
Mm-hmm.
We saw him at the Rumblejack last month, and he's been making waves all over Georgia, all over the Southeast over the last few months. And
rightfully so. He's a scary guy.
And apparently he's been saved? I don't know.
Well, it bothered me because I just knew that finally David Ali was going to get his. You guys have already seen, what has happened to me just trying to do my job with David Ali. And I just knew that, man, this would be the right guy to finally give David what's coming to him. But David proved that he outsmarted us all and brought in this. And I mean, you think about it. Think about the amazing partnerships we've seen in wrestling over the years with, the little guy and the big guy, a Shawn Michaels and a Diesel. You think about, when guys like, a Sid Vicious would join the Four Horsemen. When you have these towering figures that serve as a bodyguard or a protector or what have you, it absolutely changes the game. And it makes you wonder, where does David Ali go from here? Because he's got some backup now. He used to have the new era. Now he's got Austin Towers.
Yeah.
Yikes.
And, I think I even told you this wasn't on the podcast or it wasn't on commentary or anything like that, but I think we were just texting about it. And this was after you had your interview with, I guess you can call it an interview with Ali and Owen Knight. And the situation happened. And I think I even texted you, we need to possibly look into getting some protection for the commentary team, not just for you, but selfishly for me too, because I was like, well, if they're coming after you, who knows who might be next? And I mentioned a few different names, but one of those names was Austin Towers. I thought,
absolutely,
oh, how cool would that be if we had that big mamma jamma come and sit with us at the commentary table? Nobody's going to mess with us.
Nobody.
And then look what ended up happening. He joins up. I did not expect him to join up with David Ali.
I didn't expect it at all. He seems to be a nice guy on one level, but we thought, I don't know. But, well, since you mentioned that, and I don't want to belabor the point, but, I had actually reached out to a couple of people to see if they could give us some help. One of them being Huck. Yeah, I know. Saying his name is like Beetlejuice, right?
Don't say it 3 times.
Yeah, I won't. But we reached out to him, and he actually refused to help me because of some other affiliations that I have with one of my podcast brothers who he's been at war with for now a solid year. And
I was hoping we could kind of put that behind us, but he straight up said no. And I even thought, not even for like the right price. Like, come on.
I mean, everybody has a price except Huckabee apparently. So that's twice. I won't say it a third time. So I'll put that out there. He'll probably have words for me after seeing and hearing this, but
I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
But man, let's just a couple more that were on the list here. Yeah. Let's talk about Gunnar Logan real quick. Gunnar did something that I never thought anybody could do to Logan Creed. Let me just say that these guys came out full force. There was no like collar and elbow tie up. There was no slow pace at the beginning of the match. I mean, they came out full force, hitting big move after big move. It was nuts. I mean, I thought they were going to tear the ring down. I thought they might end up tearing the building down. But what ended up happening with referee Jeremy Prater having to stop the match because Logan could not continue. It ended up, I think he had taken a couple jackhammers. He'd taken multiple spears. He had taken a superplex off the top. I mean, and then he just started getting pummeled by Gunnar Miller. And Jeremy Prater had to get in between them and stop the match. And we were concerned that he may have had a concussion. His eyes were glazed over. He had to go grab a trash can because he had to throw up at one point. I was like, wow, I have never seen him like this. He got up. To his credit, he tried to get up and walk out on his own accord. But he's walking the wrong way. He looked out of sorts. Like you could tell he was not all there. And I was completely shocked.
Yeah. Well, I was shocked for two reasons. Obviously, we'd never seen that before. Let me also say this. I think we have to shout out Jeremy Prater because,
Yeah.
oftentimes referees get a bad rap for what we might call a bad call because we couldn't see why they would have stopped the match. And initially, we didn't understand why he stopped the match, but he could clearly see what we couldn't, that there was real danger that Logan was in. And so we thank him for that. But perhaps the equally shocking moment was for Gary Lamb to give Logan Creed the finger. I was shocked by that. We've not regularly seen him make those kinds of real lines in the sand. And we've known for a while on social media that he and Gunnar Miller are good friends, but he also had been pushing Logan for a long, long time. But one thing I think we learned about Gary last week is that if he has an ought with you, he's going to find the right time to pull the trigger. And he certainly made a statement last week in that match, and I was shocked.
And you either brought it up on commentary or might have been on the pre-show. I don't recall, but the night it was either last November, it was last December.
It was last December when
Logan
lost the title.
Lost the title,
Yeah.
and they got into some sort of argument in the middle of the ring after the match.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up choke slamming Gary through a table.
Yes.
And we had never really seen like the outcome of that. Like that never really played out. Like, oh, what's that all about?
Yeah.
Until Still Here too. When he came out, it almost seemed like had been like a master plan all along or something.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah, it was crazy. So clearly, Gary was on Gunner's side.
Have to start calling him Mr. Lamb now.
Oh gosh.
I mean, I don't. I've just never seen this side of him, and so I don't know what that means.
Don't give him any ideas. Now when he's gonna hear this and he go, hey, that's a great idea.
But what scares me though is lost in all of that. I mean, you had this turn against Logan. You had Logan getting knocked out, the concussion. But this means Gunnar Miller is the #1 contender for the newly won championship of Joe Black. So does Gary or will Gary have some sort of influence or a hand in Gunnar Miller perhaps taking the title? Or I mean, like, I have a lot of questions about this that hopefully at some point will be answered, but I'm concerned. Yeah. I'm personally concerned for Joe Black. I'm not saying he can't handle Gunnar, but I think him and Gunnar at some point is going to be an amazing match.
Could there be politics at play? Yeah.
This is a concern. Will there be some weird stipulation that Gary might come up with because Gunnar is his boy? Or was that just to get back at Logan? I don't know.
Time will tell. And we also are not sure. We were told that the winner of the Gunnar Logan match, they will become the #1 contender for a match sometime in the future. We weren't necessarily told it would be at SHW 21, which by the way is on November 13th. So we do not know the card. We mentioned that the poster had been printed up with Joe Black holding the title belt. We do not see any matches on that poster.
Yeah.
So as of right now, as we're recording this, we do not know what the card is going to be for that show. We do know it's going to be amazing because SHW shows always are, but we don't know when that title match is going to be between Gunnar and Joe Black. But
but I'm going to drop something on us that if it could be, I don't know if it's an omen, I don't know if it's a sign, I don't know if it means anything. But SHW 21 is on Friday the 13th.
Whoa. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? And as we always say, you never know what's going to happen.
You never know.
You never know who might show up.
Mm-hmm.
Jason could show up in the hockey match.
Freddy Krueger could show up.
Who knows? Yeah.
Who knows?
I was like, I almost got my guys mixed up. I was like, wait.
Yeah.
Friday 13th.
No, you're right. Jason's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then Freddie or Freddie. Who knows?
Yeah.
Texas Chainsaw Guy. Who knows?
Who knows?
Oh,
who knows?
Friday the 13th. I didn't even think about that, but yeah. Well, that we did leave one match off, conspicuous by its absence. That's going to include our guest here tonight.
Absolutely.
It was the match between Ashton Starr and SHW first-timer Brian Pillman Jr. Of course, what was a great match for the most part.
Yeah.
We did not realize that Susie was – I mean, we knew she was at ringside. She was manning one of the video cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Or womaning one of the video cameras.
Good point.
Is
Yes.
that how I should say that?
Yes.
Uh,
Running one of the cameras.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Let's
There
just
we
put it
go.
that way.
Yes.
And we did not know that she would play into this match in some form or fashion. And Ashton just has this like crazy idea, like he can't let it go. Why can't he just leave her alone? I don't get it.
Well, it's not just her. I mean, obviously he messed with her, but he was incredibly rude to the fans. He had far more aggressive music. He wasn't nice to me. He wasn't nice to anybody. I mean, it just I don't know. He has absolutely snapped. And we could make the argument that perhaps it's working for him because it did earn him a win over our guest tonight. And so maybe this is the start of, kind of a new chapter for Ashton. I'm still just blown away by his behavior. It's
I will say, so we had another special guest who was just there to watch the show, Very Morales, who's known around Georgia, definitely from Mucha Lucha, Atlanta, and so he's definitely known around the Southeast, definitely known around Georgia. He's actually been at SHW before. It's been a long time ago. I think he had a singles match with Owen Knight, I believe it was, maybe sometime last summer or something. It's been a little while back, but so he's not new to SHW. However, he was just there the other night, happened to be watching from the crowd. Saw what was going down after the match was over. Ashton looked like he might be going after Susie again. Luckily, Very showed up and kind of handled some business there. So I'm assuming there's going to be something going on between those two in the future. I don't know exactly
it's possible.
what, but
I'm sure we all were very, very grateful. So we're appreciative of him being there. And who knows what this means? A lot of new chapters were potentially written at Still Here too. Again, you can recap all of it at independentwrestling.tv. You can go to the website, sign up there. $10 a month. Your first 5 days are free with the promo code SHW. You can check out all of our content from our very first show up through Still Here too, and all of our new content will be there as well. So go ahead, check it out, binge watch it, catch up on all the stories, and catch out some amazing wrestling action as only SHW can bring you. But we've got a great guest tonight. Tell us who our guest is.
That's right. So I just mentioned he was in the match against Ashton Starr last Friday night. It is the son of a legend, but I would say he's got quite a resume in his own right. He is Flyin Brian Jr., a.k.a. Brian Pillman Jr. We were lucky enough to get him to join us on this week's episode of the podcast. We talked to him a little earlier, and here is what he had to say. Check it out.
All right, guys, we've got another fantastic interview coming your way this week. We've had some pretty awesome guests hang out with us on the podcast. And if you were with us at Still Here 2 last week, you had a chance to lay eyes on this guy. He's been all over the place. MLW, AEW, SHW, and now he's hanging out with us on the podcast. Welcome, the one and only Brian Pillman Jr. Brian, how are you, man?
Hey, how's it going? Just another day, another dollar,
Yeah, that's what
Just
they
came
say.
Just came off a loop of 3 matches, up here in the Northeast,
Awesome.
Well, it started out actually in Atlanta, and then it went to Alabama, and then it ended in New Jersey. So
Sweet.
Wow.
Sweet.
here we are. We're in Philly. We're spending some time up here with the girlfriend.
Good
And
stuff.
just letting my body recover from those 3 different battles that I had.
Yeah. Let's talk about that as you mentioned that, because I don't think a lot of people understand just how physical it is to be a pro wrestler. And, your body goes through a lot of things. What is the recovery like for you? I've heard people say that, you never, you work hurt, but you never work injured. How's your body feeling, and how long does it take to recoup?
Yeah, some things are just kind of like nagging chronic injuries that kind of just bother you a little bit over time and never go away. And some things are very detrimental to the core functionality of an athlete and need to be addressed immediately, or surgery might have to take place. But often what you'll find with wrestling is, due to the nature of it, the little bumps and bruises that add up, you get a lot more of those real chronic, kind of medium injuries, that people would say, oh, you're fine, you can keep going. And that's all fine and dandy, when you're playing a sport that has an off season and there's a large recovery period. But In the world of wrestling, it's those chronic nagging little injuries are what end up, taking a huge toll on guys and on their mental health and stuff, and re-injuring it. It's because there really is no off season. There is no large recovery period in wrestling. So as a business person and as a decision maker of your own, you have to decide, when are you going to take that time off? When are you going to sit by and let other guys, get those spots and get on those shows, and sit back and lose a few paydays and just take time to recoup your body. And sometimes that absence is very beneficial, too, in the eyes of the shows and in the fans. Keeps you scarce. So, it's not always bad to take a break, as far as a business decision goes, but for a health decision, it's absolutely necessary sometimes. So, um, this week I'll just have a couple days off, and then I'm back on the road October 10th, but then, that's just how it goes. But like some weeks you're running weekend shows, indie shows, but then you're also filming tapings during the week for different companies too, So I've had work for OVW on Tuesdays, filming TV tapings, and also AEW on, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and or Fridays. So it's like sometimes the recovery windows are very few and far between,
Yeah. Yeah. You talk about wrestling being a sport where there's not much time off, and that's absolutely accurate. So we all were shocked, of course, during the pandemic when, for many, wrestlers got time off, which was kind of a strange spot. But then there were, of course, certain companies like WWE and AEW that were able to keep going, and it opened up some opportunity for a lot of guys like yourself to be involved with things like AEW. What was pandemic life like for you?
For the first 2 months, I really took it very seriously. I was very strict with what I was doing. I really only left the house to go to the Kroger across the street and get groceries and stuff. I was very much, worried, and obviously we all were. It was the first time anyone, at least my age, has experienced anything like this. So, took it very seriously. I did all the measures I could. Took all the precautions. Luckily things went okay. It was a lot of time without money, though. It was a lot of time without a payday. As wrestling is, my only source of income, and you take away any and all form of social gathering, well, that pretty much kills my business right there. So I wasn't allowed to hunker down for long. So I know that maybe, I'm sure I did the right thing and helped contribute to slowing down the spread of this thing, but it wasn't very long that, I started getting calls to get back in the ring. My first call was from a guy named Brett Lauderdale, GCW, and I actually had to turn it down. So I had to decline a booking because I personally wasn't in the physical shape and in the in-ring shape ability to go out there and have a wrestling match. I didn't want to disrespect the sport by going out there on. He wanted to do a televised, not like a televised, but like a streamed wrestling show. So there'd be no fans there.
Yeah.
This is going to be all over Fight TV. And you're telling me my pasty white self that hasn't been in the gym in 2 months going to be all over Fight TV. And I just didn't want to disrespect the business that bad. So I was like, all right, I can't do this. It's a nice opportunity. He's a very high level promotion. I'm sure he would have taken care of me financially, whatever I needed, but it's one of those things where that would have been a trade-off too. Do I want people to see me like that on the internet? And I thought, what a better idea would be, a better strategy for getting back into wrestling would be to kick it into gear right away, physically. While all the shows were shut down, I went and, secretly trained at all these different gyms and places that were secretly opening up and training, small gyms in Pennsylvania and near Pittsburgh, where guys were, opening up little garages, little warehouses where they had a ring. And, just sort of defying the laws a little bit to kind of get together, maybe 10 of us guys get in a ring and train and stuff. And that's because I needed it. I needed that ring time to get back into shape. And I also used the time, that extra time, to get in the gym and get in an incredible physical shape. So instead of jumping on the first show back and looking like shit and wrestling like shit, I said, well, what if the first show back I'm extremely, jacked up. You know, I got new moves. I'm wrestling smooth. You know, my footwork is prime, and I got new gear. And it's like my first match back, I'm just a whole nother beast. And it's just that's what a lot of people, I think, took that motivation out of the pandemic, and you can see it in a lot of people's physical transformation. I'm not the only wrestler on the indies that said, "F this, I'm getting back at it."
Right.
And that's the thing. You have to fight that. You have to fight that mentality, that victim mentality, that there's nothing we can do. We should all stay inside, and we're all gonna die. And I said, F it, you know. And I'm very blessed at where I live in Kentucky that, you know, I'm allowed to go to the gym and stuff. And the gyms opened up, you know, not long after those 2 months. Like I said, that was the whole world just kind of locked down. But I'm very lucky to have been able to get back in the gym and stuff and get a head start on this game. You know, I know for a lot of people it was a little bit harder, you know, maybe they lived in areas that weren't allowing them to do that. But you know, what we have faced is unprecedented, and it's so nice to see that we've all gotten through it. And for a lot of us, it made us stronger. You know, it made us deal with adversity better. I definitely came out of it stronger. You know, I weigh more than I did, you know, before the pandemic, right? You know, a lot of us, I lost weight
a lot
during
of people
it.
do.
Yeah. Well, I lost a lot of weight during it because a person like me, if I'm not physically active, I'm going to lose muscle.
Right.
Like I wasn't like a person that was, you know, skinny and then somehow got fat. Like I was a person that was excess muscle, but then somehow got skinny, right? You know, like I went from what they call atrophy, right?
Yeah.
So then I was like, man, I'm just a wet noodle, you know?
Right.
And then I had to do what I had to do. I went from 197 to about 227 pounds.
Wow.
When I walked into AEW for my debut. I think my first match there at AEW, I was peaked out, you know. I was pinpoint shape, pinpoint tan. I knew that would be the biggest opportunity for me. So I built everything around. I built my whole gimmick. I built my gear design, everything I built around that debut at AEW.
Wow.
Since you brought up AEW, I'm curious here, and it's probably been reported other places, but with your deal with MLW, how did that come about with AEW? Is that something where they reached out to you and you were allowed with your contract with MLW, you were allowed to do stuff like that? How did that work?
I always was. A lot of people forget that, and I guess it's my fault that they forget. It should have been more memorable, but I was at Double or Nothing in Las Vegas. Right.
That's right.
So I had already worked for AEW before. And
I remember that, by the way. I didn't forget.
Yeah.
FYI.
No, and like that's the thing. Most people are like, "Oh yeah, duh," but I'm like, "Yeah, like this has been done before. This was something that MLW got upset about at the time, but it was well known between all parties involved, such as myself and MLW, that I was not legally obligated to not wrestle for them. I actually had a much lighter, which is very lucky to me because I wouldn't have known the difference otherwise. Because when I first signed, I didn't really look at it that deeply. You know, I didn't have a lawyer really come through it.
Gotcha.
But I was lucky that AEW did not exist before I signed. I technically could have made Impact appearances.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Technically still can.
Wow.
Hey, and it's pro wrestling, so never say never, right?
Well, yeah, never say never. You know, I just wrestled, you know, Brian Myers and Heath Slater the other night.
There you go.
So
yeah. Well,
but that would be cheating because there's no way in hell that in the month of October that I get to wrestle. It'd be pretty cool, but for OVW, AEW, MLW, and Impact, that just wouldn't be fair. That'd be cheating. I would eventually I would just become wrestling. I would just be wrestling.
I was gonna say you forget you
like,
left
are you
one
a
out.
wrestler? I'd be like, no, I am wrestling. Like this,
Right.
it's just all about me. It's one big TV show. It's this long running gag where all these companies just, you know, prostitute Brian Pillman Jr. on their show and they get the most out of him. I'm like, all right, go on to the other TV show, see if they got a spot. You know, they probably have a cool idea for you. Everybody's got an idea, right?
Hilarious.
No, you don't run out of creative with me, right? It's like,
Yeah.
the office isn't gonna be like, well, you know, we got nothing for you. Like they always got something. Oh, we got this plan. We're gonna take Pillman and his hair and his dad. You remember when his dad had that gun and he's gonna do the same thing. I'm like, all right, let's go.
Hilarious.
Let's just do this television show now.
I was going to ask about that. So, like, how do you take that? I mean, is that something where if they come up with a crazy idea like that, are you like, no, guys, come on, or do you just run with it?
No. I love it because obviously that crazy stuff like that isn't exactly what these companies are today doing. I think I think MLW has been creative with me.
Mm-hmm.
They've helped me forge my own path. I think AEW is continuing to be creative with me. And then and even OVW has been treating me like a star, like a top card guy. So no, I think a lot of these companies, are very smart about what they have, and they're going to slowly build me into something great. But no, that is kind of the case though on the indies and stuff, and some of these smaller like independent film projects that try to get you to do something wacky. And I'm like, you know what? I get it. Like, I can't fight against who I am. My name's Brian Pillman. My dad left a certain legacy. If there's a certain type of angle you want to do, or some type of ode to my father, or some type of story or something you want to do, like, I'm not going to say no. You know what I mean? I'm a performer. If I'm allowed to get the gain and the benefit and the cheers for being Brian Pillman Jr., then I should also let that be a vulnerable part of my character. Like, if an opponent or a heel wants to use that against me, in some type of weird story or something, you know what I mean? Like, it has to be allowed, because
Yeah.
it wouldn't be fair if I just went out there and was like, I'm this, and this, and yay me. And then my opponent was like, oh, well, you're only this because of this, and this. Then it's like, well, I invited that, I invited that storyline, right? I invited that plot, right? So it's like, for me to get offended, like, oh, like I always tell people when they do these podcasts, like, is there anything off limits? I'm like, no, because what would be the point, if something was off limits? Why? What would be the entertaining part of that? If my goal is to entertain you, you have something that you're just waiting to be entertained by. I'm not going to veto that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to get offended. I don't ever get upset, or like, I try not to take things personal in wrestling,
Mm-hmm. It's great to hear that, because it's not always the case with a lot of people. So
yeah, no, it sucks. It's really hard to, like, sometimes I can't say I don't, like, sometimes I do. I get upset or something, or I think that somebody's like out to get me, or doesn't like want me somewhere, or like, oh, he's gonna try to politic me out or something. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you do take things personal, but when it comes to like my story and my dad and all that stuff, I'm like, okay, like, I get it. Like, I'm not taking that shit personal. Like, you got something you want to, you got this cool creative idea. All right, let's see it. If we can make some money, we'll make some money. If we don't, if we look like assholes, then you look like the asshole, not me. Like, I look fine. I'm not the one that booked the angle. And that's the thing too. Like, the fans get it these days too. So I don't ever worry about how I'm used or if I'm losing and stuff. Like, it's up to the company and how they want to utilize me. Like, like, oh, you're being buried. I'm like, no, there's no such thing as being buried. It's the fucking internet, right? You could win a match one day, and the next day, you could lose a match one day, and the next day you could win the fucking title.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't the fucking 70s or 80s where it's like, oh, well, that guy, he's a jobber. He's never gonna win nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you this, because you mentioned your dad, and of course, obviously, I'm sure you can't do an interview or anything without talking about the legacy of your dad. I'm curious for you, what do you feel like the legacy of your dad has been? Because I think whenever you catch his career, if you caught the early part of his career, you caught the Flying Brian aspect. If you caught the later part of the career, you caught kind of the wild guy. Either way, both were wildly entertaining. For you, what do you feel like the legacy of your dad is? And have you felt pressure to live that, or are you more interested in carving out your own space?
Well, I think, like you just said it right there. I mean, that's really his legacy, is carving out your own space. He carved out his own space. He played the game of, young, baby face, yay, clean cut, clean shaven guy in the trunks, doing the drop kicks. I mean? He played that part. And even in that role, he kind of carved out his own path, right? You know what I mean? He took it to the next level. He took it to the next innovation. He had some of the best matches. So in a way, that's kind of the advice I take from his career, and the guys like Jericho who've told me that, you know, his biggest advice for him was, you know, to do something that no one's ever done before, you know.
Yeah.
So if that's what it takes to stick out and to shine and become a star in this world, then I totally believe it. You know, if that's the advice that comes from my father and on to Chris, and if that made a big impact for him, then it's definitely going to make a big impact for me, right? So
Yeah.
I've been trying, you know, very hard to just be myself and to not like overly look at his stuff and try to mimic him. You know what I mean? I've really tried to come into my own
Yeah.
just based on my life experiences and my experiences in wrestling and the different guys I've worked with, and this modern indie style that we have. I'm not like trying to shy away from it, you know.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is my environment. I would like my environment to mold the performer I am, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that
So I
makes
got a
great
few
sense.
like throwbacks to the old school style, like for
Uh-huh.
sure, but at the end of the day, I want to wrestle like the kids today are, and I want to rise to that occasion, and I want to rise up to that challenge, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. And so I'm curious because, of course, last week you spent some time with us in SHW, which was a lot of fun to have you there, man. Talk about your experience with us at Southern Honor Wrestling. How'd you like it? What was the feel for you? Let us know what you thought about that.
Well, and also I'm curious too, like, had you heard much about it going into Southern Honor? Like, had you heard from outside sources going in, like, oh, you got to check this place out, anything like that?
So I knew about Sorry, what was the original question?
The original question was to tell us about your experience with Southern Honor and what was
Oh
it
yeah,
like for you?
yeah.
Mhm.
And then he just added on to that. Okay.
Yeah.
My bad. I screwed it
No.
up.
It's all good.
Whenever there's a compound question, I always forget the first question. I'm like, oh, there's three, and then
Understandable.
but no, I originally heard about Southern Honor because, you know, obviously it's based in Atlanta and stuff, and I'd heard that, like, you know, Cody and Kenny had done some spots down there, and
Mhm.
I had also met I had met Sunny Days through DDP,
Yeah.
and I had met him at the Double or Nothing Casino Battle Royal because he was in that too.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, like, just I always knew about it, and we originally had a date scheduled, but the pandemic hit, you
That's
know.
right. Yep.
Right.
So it's coming down there like a May 29th or May 30th or something.
It was a
And I was like,
Southern Cup Invitational.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
the big tournament that we were going to have.
which in a weird way, it feels like it was 5 years ago. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that pandemic feels like it's taken so long. I could have shut
Absolutely.
down and slowed down our lives. You know, it's like I've been, I feel like I've been 26, 27 for 10 years, you know.
Yeah.
The amount of wisdom that I've gained in this during this period of time is unreal, you know.
Right. Right.
It really ages you quickly when you're going through political turmoil and all this bullshit.
Yeah.
But no, so like I was just super excited to work there because obviously I was born in Atlanta.
Mhm.
My mother's from Calhoun, Georgia, and,
Okay.
and then she met my dad in Atlanta because, you know, WCW was filming TV in Atlanta, you know,
Yeah.
and so my dad had a place. They wanted all the boys to at least have an apartment or some kind of small place in Atlanta just so they could basically exactly what we're doing today and filming multiple days in a row, you know, and pre-taping shit, you know, like. And ironically, fashion, that's kind of what we're doing at AEW. You know, we're all kind of down in Jacksonville, huddled up, you know,
Yeah.
and staying at the hotel, which is kind of cool. You know, history repeats itself.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I knew I always needed to get down there. I knew it'd be very special, but I had no idea, you know, how awesome that the crowd was going to be. Like, I haven't felt that energy from a wrestling crowd in months, you know, but like
Wow.
before the pandemic, like that's how crazy people were about wrestling. Like, before all this went down, and to think that
Yeah.
there's so much, like, to think that it's still alive and well and people are still back at it and aren't afraid to get their lives back and go out and see some entertainment. Like, it was a wonderful time, you know. It was a really, really good show.
Yeah.
And I also didn't know, because a lot of these Southern shows, they, you know, they might lack in production quality,
Mhm.
but like this show was amazing. You know, this show was super, super awesome.
Awesome.
So,
Well, we were super excited to have you, first of all, but it didn't quite work out the way you had planned. Of course, you know, Ashton Starr had his little beef going into the match with Susie that had happened at last month's show, and we were hoping to get justice for Susie, and well, it didn't quite play out the way we wanted. But one thing I did want to thank you for is you kind of got justice for Gerard here because earlier this week you actually faced David Ali and in a tag match on AEW. So if
Yeah.
you're unaware, David Ali had he kind of I'll just put it this way: he kicked GB in the nuts. Basically, is what happened. Okay, you saw it. You saw the interview. It was crazy, and we were wanting to get justice for GB, and we want to thank you because you beat David Ali the other day on AEW Dark. So appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it was a great tag match. Starting to really gel with Griff. We debuted our new finishing technique, which came out quite well in my opinion. So
do you have a name for that yet, or?
we haven't come up with a name yet. So now
Okay.
it might be a good time to name it now, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure what we would call it.
Gotcha. I was going to tell you, I mean, ever since they paired you guys up, you guys have been very impressive, despite the win-loss record, but until this week, obviously you got a big win, but you guys have been gelling really well. Had you known Griff prior to AEW?
No, not at all. That's kind of the cool thing,
Okay.
We kind of intersected paths at the big stage, So Griff was a total stranger to me before AEW. I think I had met like his tag partner vaguely at a show, like at WrestleCon, like WrestleCade or something. But the kid with the big hair and stuff.
Yep.
And but I'd never actually met Griff, so that was kind of cool. And then I found out that he was kind of brought in and mentored by Christopher Daniels, and I thought that was really cool. That to me was like a really cool way for us to develop and stuff, like because I had all these different mentors, but I wasn't like super tight with CD, but he was. And then now we have like a really core group of mentors to teach us how to be tag wrestlers.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Because the guys that are helping me out, and then the guy, like guys like Jericho, and then the guys that are helping him out, like Chris Daniels, and they all come together. And then even Cole Cabana has been helping us out, Frank Kazarian.
Awesome.
So we have a very good learning tree. We have a very strong system, very strong developmental, because it's very personal. It's not like this corporate. You're not going to class and like I don't know. I guess we're not as tied down, by certain barriers. Like we just have guys teaching guys to do. Brothers and brothers, just a brotherhood hanging out in the locker room. Hey, you need to do this, or you need to fix this. It's very much a comfortable environment. Everybody there is very happy to be there. Everybody's comfortable in their own shoes, comfortable in their own skin. Nobody's required to dress a certain way. People are just required to love each other. And just be respectful of each other. So it's a really cool environment. Yeah.
I love that. I want to talk a little bit about MLW because it's another space that I think is one of those spaces that people are really starting to talk about quite a bit. And they, of course, were impacted by the pandemic, but they're getting ready for the return, as they're calling it, in about a month or so. Talk a bit about what it's like to hop back into the MLW scenario. I mean, are we going to be seeing like empty arena situations? Are they going to be changing the way they're doing things? What does that look like?
I really do commend them for, kicking things back into gear and restarting stuff. Again, it was very hard for guys like me and guys like Davey Boy that make a living on the wrestling, and to be told that we can't go to work for several months and with limited options to, either change deals or re-sign or whatever, so it was like really bullshit for a while. But again, like if they want to make do on their end of the bargain and make do on their promise, and they're going to do the restart, and we're going to have several dates in October to really kick things off. And so I'm really excited, actually. I'm really excited to just get back to work. They've always presented a very professional product. They've always used the highest level talent possibly available to them, so they're no slouch when it comes to putting on a great product. And it was actually quite an honor to be, the mainstay of that product for the better part of a year and a half, at least, me and Davey Boy Smith Jr. and Teddy Hart as well, being a part of that. So it was just kind of cool to be a big part of the company, have a lot of cool different storylines that we could do organically, again, like talk about another company that lets wrestlers be wrestlers, there's no other, I think there's no better place to like kind of develop as a young talent, right? Like it's not something that, it's not AEW or WWE where you've made it to the pinnacle, but it's a place to develop and hone your craft, and it's also a worldwide television program. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's right.
Even another company like that is like OVW. I compare the two of them, quite well. That like OVW has worldwide coverage.
Right.
They're in millions of homes as well.
Mm-hmm.
MLW's on BN Sports. They're in millions of homes.
Right. Right.
You travel outside the U.S. and there's a lot of different channels that are more popular and stuff. So we have a lot of international coverage with MLW. The
Wow.
Hispanic market knows me very well.
Wow.
We always get great reactions when we go to Tijuana, Mexico,
Wow.
and stuff like that. So, and again, like I said, OVW is doing some big things too down there in Louisville, and giving guys some opportunities to be on some screens and to be on TV. A friend of mine's my German teacher in high school. She said her husband just saw me on OVW. So
Wow.
that was pretty cool. I was like, oh, I don't know where I don't know where you're watching that at, but it must have been on a channel somewhere.
Right. Right.
You never know. And you mentioned going down to Mexico. Now, prior to the pandemic, because obviously during the pandemic, there's not a whole lot of traveling going on, at least outside the country. But were you doing a lot of overseas, internationally, any international bookings, or have you done a lot of stuff overseas?
Before the pandemic, I've been in a lot of places. So
Yeah.
my last match was in Mexico
Wow.
Gotcha.
before the pandemic, March 18th or 13th, one of the two.
Yeah.
That was the exact, 13th, because the 15th was the final indie show, which was in Las Vegas at FSW.
Wow.
I was just curious if you've done
That I was supposed to be on.
a lot of stuff in like the UK, because I know that's such a hotbed they have such hot crowds. for
Yeah.
wrestling
So I
and-
mean, I've been to Mexico twice. I've been to Canada.
Yeah.
Several times.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Qatar in the Middle East once.
Wow.
Sweet.
And I've been to England one time for 10 days. It was a 10-day tour.
Okay.
Wow.
I had a loop of shows that these guys worked together to get me on.
Wow.
I'm just always curious the different takes on the different crowds in different countries. Like,
the English crowd is very unique. They're very rowdy. They're very hyped. They really like wrestling. But they've also come up around a different kind of style. So
Yeah.
Right.
So it's kind of cool. Like you just change up the way you do things in different parts of the world, and you start to see the different reactions you get.
Yeah. That's cool.
And you kind of see that style on NXT UK and how
Mhm.
they do things there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I love that. For you, and we tend to ask people this, and I know there's still a lot of room left in your career. Do you have any dream matches? Anybody you want to make sure you're battling anytime soon? Because I'm sure the floor is wide open for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really cool stories. I'm not a big person on dream matches. I don't really have like, oh, I want to have this one match. Because to me, sometimes it's like the second or third or like the fourth meeting, that really becomes that match. Sometimes it takes that time to have that synergy. So everybody's like, oh, what's your dream match? Well, I don't look at it as a match. I look at it as a program.
Sure.
I look at it as a
Sure.
series
Yeah.
of matches. Who do I want to do business with? Who do I want to tell a story with?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of stories to be told at AEW. I think that's
Mhm.
where my character fits best. I think there's some stories to be told with Cody Rhodes, be a dream match of mine. If I had to pick a dream match, a lot of guys there. I'd like to work with a lot of the veterans. I'd like to work with Dustin Rhodes, maybe tell a story there.
Yeah.
A lot of guys I'd like to work with at AEW. Chris Jericho, obviously, my favorite wrestler.
Yeah.
So that would be cool.
Wow.
How amazing is it, by the way? You mentioned Jericho and Dustin Rhodes, like the age that they are, and they're still at the top of their game. Like it blows my mind.
Yeah, and those are the guys that help you get better. You know what I mean? Like I love working with the younger guys because they work the same way as me, and the timing's all the same and everything. But
Yeah.
You learn different things from working with the older guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And so I'm curious because right now you kind of have a really interesting scenario where you're able to work in multiple companies, be that MLW or AEW or OVW or those types of things. Would you ever want a scenario where you're just primarily working for one company? And if that is the case, is there a goal for which company that might be?
Yeah, I mean, like I talked about earlier, just kind of being tossed around to the different places. And, obviously maybe I shouldn't have said it in that negative way. It's an absolute blessing, it's an absolute opportunity. It's trust me, it's everybody's dream to have all these opportunities and work for these companies. But
Yeah.
but in many ways it could be looked at as a negative because, I really do want to find a home. I really do want to find the place to come into my own and have a company really invest in me and have a story with me. So, at some point, yeah, absolutely. I would love to just hunker down and have like a nice 10-year career somewhere. You know what I mean? Like at least, like just really just like be able to develop with the same style of guys, like the same mindset, the same kind of mentality towards the business and really hunker down. And I think that team is with AEW, you know what I mean? So, but as an adult, I have to handle my situation as I go, and I have to finish up business where I got to finish up business. This
Sure.
pandemic was unprecedented,
Mhm.
and I think I got a little impatient, so then I started chasing more. And but no one ever failed by chasing opportunities. You know what I mean? So
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
and no one ever like ruined their chances at being somebody because they did too many wrestling matches. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you could say I might be, exposing myself too much online, but all that exposure isn't going to hurt nobody. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'm getting out there. I'm getting matches. Win or lose. As you can see, it doesn't ever matter to me.
Hmm.
You look at the comments, you watch the videos. People have positive things to say. They
Hmm.
might even be. And even if they are upset that I'm losing, that means they're going to be that much happier when I start winning,
Right.
So
Right.
Right.
I'm not strapped. I'm not sweating it. I have great business to do at MLW. Great
Mhm.
stories to tell left there. Great talent, also very young,
Yeah.
aspiring talent there left to work with. And I also have a great potential future at AEW, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So, finish up some of the stuff I did at MLW and then head on over to AEW and start some really groundbreaking, kind of career defining things
Yeah.
at AEW, right? Like I feel like my career hasn't even started yet. That's how um, valuable I place on like constantly evolving and going to the next level. Is people think I've done so much already, but I don't think I've done anything,
Wow.
you know, because I'm always pushing. And then during all that chaos, I also have OVW
Mhm.
where I'm chasing after the OVW heavyweight title
Yeah.
and the newly announced American or not American national title,
Hmm.
Mhm.
the
And
OVW heavyweight national title,
and
which is now held by Jesse Goddard, which was
Uh-huh.
introduced in the battle royal we just had.
Hmm.
So I got two big feuds going on there. I got some stories left to do at MLW and a
Yeah.
bright future at AEW. So every company has been a part of my success, and I always, I want to thank Al Snow and Court Bauer and Cody Rhodes and Tony Khan and Chris Jericho and everybody that's helped me out, helped me get to where I need to be. And also DDP. I want to thank
Yeah.
DDP,
yeah.
If it wasn't for DDP, I wouldn't have any of these gigs right now. I wouldn't be doing nothing.
Wow.
So
DDP.
DDP is the man.
Yeah, he
He's the
is.
man.
DDPY.
He is the man.
He's been a part of SHW as well
Yeah.
a few times. So we love DDP down here and down
Yeah.
here in
Yeah,
Georgia. So,
yeah.
uh,
DDP's the brother.
Yeah.
but you mentioned, that's a great outlook to have, is the fact that a lot of people think you've done a lot, and in your own mind, you haven't done a lot, and that's
Mm.
a good mindset to have, to just keep yourself motivated, to keep yourself pushing forward. So I just want to thank you for coming to SHW last week, because
Yeah.
I had a blast. It was an honor for me and GB to call one of your matches. And so I hope
Absolutely.
that we get to do it again, whether it's in SHW or whether it's in another promotion
Yeah.
where we might end up as well. So who knows?
Yeah.
But it would be great to do that some more down the road for sure.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me at Southern Honor Wrestling, and
Yeah.
thank you for having me on this podcast. So it's been a great time.
Absolutely. 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 Well, let people know how they can stay in touch with you on social media and any other things that you've got going on as well.
Well, guys, you can always catch me on Instagram at FlyingBrian41 and Twitter at FlyingBrian Jr. I got a Pro Wrestling Tees account,
Yeah.
ProWrestlingTees.com/Brian Pillman Jr., all
Awesome.
spelled out. So, I don't really do Facebook, so you don't have to worry about that. But yeah, I mean, contact me, connect with me, follow me, whatever. I'm usually pretty easy to get a hold of. Sometimes I'm not, These guys had to jump through amazing hoops to get me to do this podcast. They had to
For which
bribe
we are
my
grateful.
lawyer. They had to bribe me. They had to book me for their show, first off. So that's a good way to get me on your podcast. Book me for your indie show, pay me, and then I'll do the podcast for free,
Yeah.
So
There we
get
go.
me on, get me to wrestle, book me in your town. I'll be there. I'll wrestle. I've been kicking this pandemic's ass. I've been wrestling all over the world,
Yeah.
and I haven't gotten sick. So take
Awesome.
that for what you will.
Well, there you go. Well, man, we appreciate you so much for coming on with us, and we look forward to seeing you again down the road sometime soon, hopefully.
Hey, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, guys, that was a fun conversation with Brian Pillman Jr. Certainly learned a lot about his journey, and it's already been short, but boy, has it been filled with a lot of amazing stops and amazing stories. So make sure you're following Flyin Brian Jr., Brian Pillman Jr. on all social media. You heard all of his information there. Boy, was that a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun, and I tell you what, it's been a good week. We're finally recovering. You heard us recapping Still Here 2 earlier in the show, and just what an amazing show that was. I can't wait for November 13th. And you did hear me correctly. It will be the second Friday in November, so make sure you put that on your calendars. It'll be November 13th, and it will be SHW 21. It'll be the official start of the Joe Black era.
Yes.
In
I love
SHW.
that. It is indeed a new era for SHW, and we're pumped about that. And speaking of new era, we have to send our condolences to the one and only Danny Jordan, who shared on social media a tremendous loss in her family, which is why we did not see her at Still Here 2. And we know she is taking some much needed time. And listen, loss is severe and it's serious. And take all the time you need, Danny. Your SHW family supports you. And we also lost another wrestling legend over this podcast season, that being Road Warrior Animal of the Road Warriors. So some tremendous losses impacted in the world of pro wrestling. So certainly our thoughts and prayers are with families and fans and friends and the like. And we just did not want to let those moments pass without acknowledging them here on SHW. This is our wrestling podcast.
That's right. Shout out to Danny. We love you. We're thinking about you, and we can't wait to see you whenever you come back. And like you said, Road Warrior. And then you heard the Tim Bell salute last week for Drew Game, a local Georgia wrestler, Drew Game, that passed away too. So just we're hug your loved ones. It's a crazy time, and hopefully we'll pull through this pandemic here in the not too distant future. Hopefully. And we can everybody can get back to normal. We've had a great time at the last two SHW shows. We look forward.
They've been amazing.
We look forward to having another great time on November 13th. And it's almost like therapy for us, because
it is.
For 6 months or so, we're all at home and just chomping at the bit to get back. And it's felt so great to be back.
Yes.
And we hope you guys will join us November 13th. And, of course, we still have a few episodes of the show before we get to that point. But you're going to hear us pumping up the next show quite a bit. So we can't wait to see you. And we can't wait to see you next week right here on another episode of SHW.
This is our wrestling.
There you go.